Welcome back to Spectora Spotlight. This is part 2 of our conversation with Chris Skinner from Silk Inspections in Fayetteville, North Carolina. In part 1, we talked about the everyday stuff inspectors are automating already without even calling it AI. Today, we're talking specific tools, what Chris is actually using, what's been a game changer, and what just isn't worth your time. If you've been curious about using AI for reports, emails, or marketing, but weren't sure where to start, this episode is for you. And before we jump in, don't forget to follow the show or leave us a comment if this series has been helpful. It seriously helps more than you know. Let's get into it. Welcome back to part 2 with Chris Skinner of Silk Inspections. If you missed part 1, go hit play on that. We talked all about the everyday automation inspectors are already using or maybe just thinking about using. So now we're going to dive into the fun stuff. AI tools, what actually works, what maybe flopped. Chris has been experimenting and he's got thoughts. So Chris, curious how you sold this to the owner of your company, letting you try out AI tools. Because I'm sure that many people listening to this are going to be like, I'm going to need to know his trick.
Yeah. So the first time that we spoke, I mentioned where kind of the idea came from. It happened during my shadowing period where I was learning the ropes of the business owner and his process of inspecting and filling out the report. And at the time, it's funny, I pretty vividly remember the instance. I had this, kind of this striking thought. I imagined there being, basically a certified master inspector following us around. And that's the way that I presented it to John. And I said, man, what if we had this certified master inspector, thousands of inspections under his belt, following us around? He knew our library of narratives forward and backward. And so if you say, whatever keywords, because this is what you're seeing in the home, and you take a photo or a video and you add some sort of verbal context along with the media that you're capturing, imagine this human assistant actually creating the report for you, allowing your focus and attention to stay on the home as opposed to having to move from the reason why we're there to actually filling out the report. And to be perfectly honest, initially, he was resistant to the idea, and understandably so, wanted me to be put through the paces and kind of do it the more established way, which I did do for quite some time. But in the background, I was working on, a custom model to help me because I felt a conviction about how beneficial this could be. But eventually, after probably talking his ear off a number of times, I reiterated that idea of being able to leave your focus and attention on the home to the maximum degree. And one of the times that I framed it in that way, I think it dawned on John how valuable that could potentially be, assuming that everything else worked the way that you would expect it to, assuming that the report would be completed and accurate and everything else unchanged. But the idea of being able to leave your focus on the home is definitely the benefit that got him to even entertain the possibility. And granted, I'm the only one that I know of at Silk that's using these tools. But I do believe that if something were to come about that was more established, that they would be likely to at least give it a shot.
Okay, so that's neat. So everyone watching or listening, that's probably a decent approach to take because, I think where AI is such a benefit is seeing it as supplemental. It's not a replacement. It's supplemental to what you're doing. And it is a way that frees you up to do what the human actually needs to do that AI can't do, right? You have more bandwidth to focus on that and to focus on, what really matters, which is the property that you're inspecting, the homeowner, the seller, the agent, the people that you're working with. If you can have more time for that and have this little free admin assistant or master inspector, however you want to frame it, when you can pass off some of that stuff and focus your attention on what it is that you are certified to do as a home inspector and your attention on the home, then just hot tip, I think that's a pretty good approach. So, Chris, that said, what AI tools have you tried so far, and what was your first impression of those?
So I've tried a variety of AI models. The one that I've settled on is GPT, but there are quite a few others out there, DeepSeek and Bard, and there's really a plethora, and some of them are more focused in what they have to offer. A GPT, especially the conversational model, I find that it works for me in the way that I use it, but it's not to say that it's the only one for sure. But the thing that I really like about GPT is some time ago they released the ability to train your own custom model. So if you have any sort of repetitive task, or if you can conceptualize any sort of framework that you want it to be built off of, then you can do that. And it's not all that hard. You don't have to be technically savvy. If you can train a human being to do something, then more than likely you can train a GPT model to accomplish something similar. So yeah, GPT is what I've used. I do have a number of custom models that I've created to accomplish specific tasks that I do.
So were there any that surprised you, like either in a good way or a total letdown, something that you'd be like, steer clear? Because I know I used one once that told me to prevent a chimney fire by filling the fireplace with water. And that is a bad idea. That is not true. So, were there any that you've tried that you were just like, ooh, God, no?
I mean, to be honest, no. It's not to say that there's not plenty out there that would fail at what somebody would find acceptable. But the way that I've utilized them they've all been um, kind of aimed at a specific use case. And because I go into it with expecting, the output to fall within these parameters or these guidelines, if what I get back out of it falls outside of what I'm expecting, then my first thing that I do is I try to tweak it in a way to where it gives me what it is that I need. And and I would say that 95% of the time that I've spent with AI in terms of with home inspection, it has been the GPT. And honestly, there have been times where I have just absolutely been surprised to the point where it makes me laugh. Like I can give one quick example. This was before I realized that it could take images and added context and then give you some sort of output. And so I hadn't been keeping track of any of the latest releases or anything. And so I was looking at a defect. I took a photo of it. I offered the GPT a little bit of contextual information, letting it know, what I was looking at, kind of what I was thinking, but that I wanted an unbiased opinion. And the information that it gave me was spot on. Absolutely elated the fact that it gave me accurate information based off of information that was inside of a photograph. So it's pretty awesome.
One of the last, I was at a conference just a few months ago and was talking to someone who uses it to scan appliance decals and see if there's any recall information or anything in particular that they should know. And was just that's really all he was doing with it. He just started kind of taking pictures and being like, is there anything about this water heater that I should know about, or whatever model of something? And he said he was like stunned because it's for the same reason, because it was just like, actually, this one built in, manufactured in 2017 is known to fail after something something. And he was just like, oh my God. And of course, like double checked that information online and was like, it's accurate. And it's like, well, that's where the AI is getting all the information from, right? I would say that it's important, especially to like double check that stuff, right? And that's one thing where, some people have been suspicious or like, well, what if the information's wrong? It's like you should always double check it, right? But it can like point you in a direction or and then you go down this path and you're like, holy cow. And I will say that 9 times out of 10, it is accurate because it's pulling from way more sources that I could possibly like Google on my own. It would take me a day, right? So I think that that's, something that's really important for people to understand is, if you're not hesitating to use a browser to Google or whatever your DuckDuckGo, whatever your browser is, if you're willing to Google something to find more information, well, you could skip a step and use the free even if you just start with tiptoeing into the free version of ChatGPT, then that's going to be giving you all of that information in a summary. And then you can dig a little deeper. It will say just that alone can save you hours of time, right? So you
Yeah.
mentioned
Yeah, absolutely.
so you mentioned just a minute ago, just a few minutes ago, real use cases, and I kind of want to talk about that. In your day to day, are you like writing with GPT? Are you summarizing? Are you brainstorming? How are you actually using AI and like kind of the business side of things? I know we talked a little bit about how you were using it in inspections, but I'm just curious how you're using it, what's made inspecting easier and more enjoyable for you with using AI as a tool.
Yeah. So in terms of the kind of the business back end work, um, I I introduced the usage of AI in kind of drumming up text messages and then email communications a little bit later in the game. And I'm glad that it happened that way because I have my own unique style of communicating with people. And just, over my time inspecting, I have found a pretty effective way to communicate with clients and with agents. And so there are certain keywords and phrases that I use most consistently. And whenever I kind of hammered out exactly what it is that I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it, okay, so i.e., I have my framework of my communication, that's all I needed to then go and train a GPT model. So I've trained a model to essentially talk how I talk. So give me the output in the way that I would usually send it to a client or an agent. But that always includes personal information. So it's the client's or the agent's first name, or it's the address of the home, or the services that I'm providing. And so I will just give it that information kind of as a bullet point list. I can do it conversationally or I can type it out, whichever is easiest in the moment. And because I've trained it with that framework, the output that it gives me is something that I can copy and paste, drop into a text message and shoot that off, or an email and shoot that off. Whenever you're talking to, three, four, five, 10 agents in a day or two, same thing with the number of clients, even if it only saves you a minute or two each time that you do that, it ends up adding up over the course of a day and a week. So that's one of the primary ways that I use it for like back end office admin type.
So let's talk about like when you're actually on site and right doing an inspection, right? So when you're on site doing an inspection, and how has it eliminated some like kind of scatter for you, or like when you're like doing this or doing this, like, or has it enabled you or allowed you to kind of better lock into to what it is that you're doing, which is inspecting the home instead of getting, these extraneous kind of clutter or distractions? Has it helped you streamline things like actually using it like in an inspection?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, honestly, that piece of all of this is what I would for myself consider the biggest and most important piece. You know, sure, we spend a lot of time communicating with people and doing all these other types of tasks, but everything is centralized around actually doing an inspection. So as you move throughout the home, what does that process look like for you? And, one of the things just on a personal level that I find I am most passionate about is finding a flow state or kind of in the zone. Different people call it different things depending upon what you're doing, but really all it is a mental state where you have limited resistance and you can kind of slipstream through whatever it is that you're doing. That subject in and of itself is a pretty fascinating one for me. But um, back to whenever I was shadowing and learning the ropes, I noticed that John was spending a lot of time looking at the home and then looking at the phone to fill out or search for a comment and then redirecting focus and attention back to the home. And so as I kind of was looking at this from a third person perspective, the process in and of itself, although he made it work seamlessly for him, for me personally, it just seemed very choppy. And so, yes, our job is to produce. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't get into that groove. I couldn't get into that flow state. And so that was my initial primary driver in trying to find a way to streamline this stuff for me is I wanted to be able to get into that flow state and maintain that for longer periods of time because I knew that was going to offer me a variety of benefits. So saving time is an obvious one, but flow state is an extremely enjoyable mental state to be in. And so I've noticed that, I mean, I love this work and this job as is, but whenever I actually get to tap into that mental place and find that flow state, it makes it even more enjoyable. So that would I say that, or I would say that is one of the biggest benefits for me personally, is it allows me to tap into that. And yeah, it definitely is a game changer as far as that goes for me.
Oh, aside from making you more efficient and making shaving minutes, sometimes hours off of your day, it also makes you like inspecting homes better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is if you are constantly moving your attention back and forth between the subject matter and then filling out your report, and if you could just imagine your process changing to the point to where you are dominantly leaving your focus and attention on the home, it doesn't take too much imagination to kind of play that out and see how much quicker the actual inspection process can go for you if you're not stopping every 30 seconds or every minute to fill out something on your phone. If you can leave your focus on the home for a longer period of time, then you are going to breeze through that. And it's not that, you're trying to be hasty or anything, but you are able to kind of find that groove and yeah, it makes the process a lot more enjoyable.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer to me. But that said, is there something about AI, or is there an area where you think inspectors should be cautious with AI? Like, is there something you would steer clear of as far as using AI as a tool in your job as a home inspector?
I think just in general, if an inspector has an idea and a way that they think that AI can benefit their process, I think personally it's worth spending time exploring that. But to answer your question, and it's a point that you made earlier, you gave the example of an inspector taking like a photo of a water heater or perhaps data plates. I think for now, and maybe indefinitely, it's best to always remain skeptical. So question the information that it gives you and do your due diligence. There may be even some inspectors who enter the industry who would prefer the AI to do the bulk of the work, including inspecting. That to me sounds counterproductive. So yeah, I think that I would remain cautious and skeptical of the information that it gives you. Do the due diligence, make sure that it's accurate, and to add a little bit to that, because I too use it in that way. If I have an issue finding, a manufacturer date or something from a data plate, or like you said, a recall notice based on a model number or a serial number. I always prompt the GPT to also give me links to sources that it uses to where it derives its information from. So I don't necessarily have to start from scratch if I go and do it in a more analog way and search Google. I can actually see the direct links that it used to provide that information. So yeah, I think that that's a, to sum it up, is just to be skeptical and, healthily skeptical of the information that it gives you.
And ask your GPT to please provide its sources.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Kind of along with that, so what would be your advice to folks who want to try AI but feel overwhelmed or they don't know where to start? We may have kind of already covered this, or I could surmise that your response might be to start with a free GPT and just kind of play around with it and see what it's capable of. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I asked you that question.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, if you've spent zero time, with the technology, but you're interested in it at least enough to explore it, then I would say that that's step one, is kind of dipping your toes into it, downloading a free version of something, whether it's GPT or some other model. Do a Google search and find out, what models are out there, even because there are quite a few of them.
So many.
But yeah, I mean, I think GPT is a pretty good. There really are so many, and they're advancing so quickly. But GPT is a good place to start. So I think just, dipping your toes into the water, having some conversations with it, testing it in a variety of ways. And then I think another important thing to do as like a next step would be to learn just in general how AI is helping streamline processes, not necessarily just in home inspection, but really just in general, because that can give you some insights into what the possibilities are and how you could potentially use it. And then I think a third thing that you could do that would be very beneficial is really learning how to interact with it. Prompt engineering is definitely a thing. So understanding how to get out of it what it is that you want to get out of it is very important if you want consistency and accuracy to the highest degree. So understanding how to go about getting that information is going to be pretty key as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's like, with any tool, it's like you can hand me a chainsaw and I'm like, I know what this is supposed to do, but you really don't want me to turn it on, right? Like I don't know how to use a chainsaw. I mean, I could probably figure it out if I had to, but it's the same thing with AI. It's like it is a tool, but there's a learning curve to use it and to maximize and get the best results. And the more you use it, if you're sticking with a certain GPT, like, I mean, I started using it just for help, with writing little summaries or something. It's like, and I'll fix it. Like you just write it, whatever. And of course, I would never say to fill your fireplace with water, but there was some other good, information. There's other good information there about preventing chimney fires. That just wasn't one of them. So yeah, I think part of it is just learning to how to use it as a tool like you would learn to use any tool. Out of the box, it might be like, okay, just consider it something else that you have to kind of learn. So like looking ahead and kind of zooming out a bit from what we've been talking about, we've already talked a little bit about where you see AI fitting into the future of this industry. I think that it could have enormous impact. And I feel like, there is a lot that as people begin using it more and more, and believe me, things like the way inspectors feel about it has changed in the past 5 years because there was so much resistance. And now I'm just hearing people ask like, well, what about AI? And, how are you using it? And they're really eager to hear from other inspectors. And that's why I invited you onto this show, because I'm like, I need to get this out there, right? Because they want to hear from other people how they're using it and they're curious. And that is certainly a shift from a few years ago. And I think that there is kind of a greater understanding that, this is here to stay, right? This isn't just some little, AI, and then it recedes, right? And goes back to its cave. Like this is a full on, like it's in this world, right? And so let's learn how to like play nice with it and live with it. So if you could wave a magic wand, what is one thing like in the future that you would love for AI to solve for you, or something that you hope that you can train your GPT to do for you? What would be that one thing? Magic wand.
That is a really great question. So that essentially comes full circle all the way back to that initial kind of inception of an idea. Without removing any sort of skill or knowledge from myself as a human who inspects homes. So, that being still a requirement, I think that if I could wave a magic wand, it would be that an AI would take the media that I capture and any sort of relevant contextual information associated with images and pictures and essentially fills out my report for me. I mean, if I spend, 30 minutes filling out a report, um, the way that I'm doing it now, which is much more streamlined than what I was doing even just 6 months ago, if it can take that 30 minutes and reduce it down to a matter of 10, 15 minutes or even less in some cases, because I'm just going to spend the time reviewing over it just to make sure that it is what it needs to be. That I would say is going to be about the best case scenario, in my opinion. I still get to do the job of inspecting. The report kind of is taken care of in and of itself. I make sure that it's good to go, and then I turn that product over to the client. And then I get to continue on and do the thing that I enjoy doing, which is actually inspecting homes. So that would definitely be my answer to that question.
That's a good answer. And that would certainly be magical. So you'd collect all the media, you'd be on site doing everything, and then you'd be like, here you go, and spit out a report, and you just review the report for accuracy, make sure everything is in there and covered, and just carry on with your day.
Absolutely. I mean, my goodness, I could only imagine how many more inspections I could fit in a day, in a week's time, if that were the case. If I could essentially remove the report writing process. And yeah, I mean, I view this job as a really good service to people. And the more work that I can do, the more people that I can impact, the more agents that I can help, the more clients that I can be there for. And so yeah, it's a win-win across the board for me if something like that could come to fruition.
Right. I mean, not to mention, the more focus or time and energy you could have on building those relationships and spending some time, if you wanted to do marketing or community events, right? Like, because a lot of that in-person networking is still so valuable. And I tell inspectors that all the time, like sponsor a little league team. Like someone will stare at your inspection company logo for however long little league lasts. I don't have children and I don't know about Little League, but I tell you that they've been very successful doing that. So it just opens you up for more time to do all the things, and people hire people, right? They don't hire AI. And if it helps make you a better inspector, a happier inspector, and someone with more bandwidth to build relationships, then that sounds wonderful to me.
I could not agree more. Absolutely.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's probably a wrap on part 2 with Chris Skinner from Self Inspections. Big thanks to you, Chris, for keeping it real and sharing what is working out in the field. If you're curious about testing some of this stuff yourself, check the show notes for links to our favorite tools and tips. And if this episode helps you out, send it to an inspector friend who needs to hear it, who might be drowning in admin tasks. So, what'd you think? You don't need to become a full nerdy AI wizard to get big wins. You just need to pick one tool, try one workflow, and build it out from there. Huge thanks to Chris Skinner from Silk Inspections for breaking it all down and showing how it actually plays out in real inspector life. We've got more good stuff coming your way soon. Shorter episodes, fresh voices in the industry, and zero fluff. Make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone in your inspector circle. Let's raise the bar together. Catch you next time.